Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. Andre here. Today is the first in a new series of videos on this channel called Andre Explores. It's going to be an eclectic march through the worlds of history, science, pop culture, music, kind of like a travel video for your mind. And so to kick things off, we're going to start with a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. It doesn't get more eclectic than this: money laundering. If you've watched other videos on this channel, you've probably heard me make passing reference to my time as a U.S. Army Special Forces instructor and contractor. Most of my time working in that space was focused on what's called illicit finance, or the way that criminal or covert government organizations move and manage money to support their various operations. So in this video, we're going to take a look at some of the theoretical considerations behind money laundering, take a very high-level basic look at the process involved, and then finally address some of the challenges that exist in our modern digital era. But before we go any further, let's be absolutely clear on this. This is not an instructional how-to video. Do not try this at home.
Look, I'm very sorry. I do not know anything about any money laundering.
Whenever people ask me what exactly money laundering is or what it entails, I always tell them that it's the art and science of making something that does not belong somewhere appear as if it does. Now, I understand how vague that sounds because every time I say that, someone looks at me like, what does that mean? I don't understand what you just said. I mean, it kind of sounds like when Neo went to see the Oracle in the Matrix, and he's like, how do I become the one? And she's like, well, if you try to become the one, then you can never be the one. In order to understand, you must first forget. Like, what does that actually mean? That's not a helpful description at all. Anytime a government or criminal organization wants to move, whether it's money or weapons or any kind of equipment from one place to another secretly, they need to do it under the pretense of something else. It's kind of like the reverse of a magic trick. Whether you're cutting someone in half or making the Statue of Liberty disappear, at the end of the day, when people say, oh my God, how does this work? Your answer is just going to be, ooh, magic. In money laundering, it's the exact opposite of that. You're making something appear somewhere it shouldn't be, and then providing a very, very compelling and coherent reason as to how it got there. You want to give the appearance of legitimacy where none really exists. So the first concept to really focus on is the idea that your story has to match your objectives. You have to understand what it is that you're actually trying to accomplish. Are you moving $10,000 across a border, or are you moving $10 million across a border? In each one of those cases, the story is going to be dramatically different. So too will the amount of banking infrastructure, corporate infrastructure, legal infrastructure that you need to set up in order to facilitate that. And this part of it, the storytelling aspect of it, is the thing that always appealed most to me about working in the space. Yes, you need to understand principles of economics, accounting, finance, all of that stuff that might seem kind of dry, but they become the tools through which you begin to tell your story. And ideally, if you do it well enough, to stand up to scrutiny, or even better, never attract any scrutiny at all.
There are two kinds of people in business today: the quick and the dead.
The next thing to understand is knowing the basics. Yes, you need to understand economics, accounting, and finance. These are all important things when you're talking about laundering money. You need to understand the dynamics of how the economy works, how money works, and how to accurately account for all of that stuff so that you know what's where. The bottom line is, if you don't understand the underlying fundamental principles of legitimate business operations, you can't possibly understand how to subvert regulations and engage in what some people might describe as nefarious activities. You can't abuse a tool or misuse a tool unless you first understand and master how to use it correctly. That's really good. Should put that on a sign.
It stinks.
And the third theoretical concept that I want to address is poking holes in your own scenario, being your own critic. It is very much like writing a movie where as you're going, you're saying, okay, I want my characters to do these things, but I need to have motivations, and those motivations need to be compatible with the ideas of the other characters, and they need to make sense in the world. They can't just happen. The idea is that you have to be able to say, hey, here's a reason for everything that we've done, here's a reason for every decision that's been made, and each one of those reasons is compatible with all of the other reasons and decisions that have been made.
You cops aren't too bright, are you? Okay.
So now we're going to talk about the very, very basics of the process behind actually laundering money. What does it actually look like? What are you actually doing? Phase one is called placement. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It's the very, very first step, the origin of the process, where you're taking some kind of amount of money and you're inserting it into some kind of system that you have designed and constructed. Making the insertion of that value look legitimate, making it blend and flow is one of the hardest parts of the entire process, and if you're not careful, can actually end up creating a lot of problems for you later on. This kind of comes back to that theoretical idea we were talking about before about having a consistent story and narrative. If you don't have a flow to what you're doing, if every decision that your characters make doesn't make sense within the context of the narrative you're constructing, some auditor or analyst or law enforcement organization is going to see what you're doing and say, maybe we should take a closer look at this. This doesn't quite track. So that insertion point can be incredibly stressful and complicated because you need to understand not only that first step, but 10 steps later, how it will come back to haunt you, if it comes back to haunt you.
Give it back to me as collateral on a loan that I make to you.
Phase two is called layering, or in some cases, the main wash. Personally, I think that's super melodramatic. It kind of sounds like someone smoking a cigar in like a 1920s mob movie. Say we're doing with the main wash. Really? Do you need to just call it layering? That's simple enough. Layering is where the real magic happens. It's where the process of laundering really takes place. It's taking the value stored in some kind of asset, whether it's cash or gold, like we said, and converting it between various different types of assets and jurisdictions in order to obfuscate or obscure the origins of that value, ideally so that anyone looking at the end state doesn't know where everything came from. Virtually anything can be used to launder money. Anything that has value to somebody can be manipulated to transfer value from one point to another. Whether it's Beanie Babies or action figures or gold on WoW, it doesn't make a difference. Anything that has value and can be transferred from one individual to another can ultimately be abused by individuals with nefarious intent.
How's what? That's it. Don't you get it? It's your money. You don't pay it back. It's yours.
Phase three is called integration. And this is when you take the money that you placed and layered and are now going to incorporate into, ideally, legitimate economic pursuits, whether that's investing in businesses, buying real estate, stock market, whatever it is. The ultimate end goal of any kind of money laundering process should, conceptually at least, always be cleaning and legitimizing whatever nefarious ill-gotten gains that you possess, moving it into a position where it can be used without scrutiny freely in the legitimate economy.
And it's cleaned. It is now laundered.
Now that we've covered the three basic steps and talked about some conceptual considerations, let's take a look at an example. So let's say you are a criminal individual and you find yourself in possession of $500,000 in cash. And you decide, hey, I'm going to buy a house. Houses are good. I'd like to buy one. If you go to the bank with a duffel bag full of cash and say, I'll take a house, please, they're going to say, dude, where did you get $500,000 in cash? You need to create some kind of story, a mythology as to how it is you came into the possession of all of this money. And not only that, but you also need a placement that has a narrative that would support that level of cash. So while we're making up scenarios and playing pretend, let's imagine that you have a friend who owns a bar. Your friend decides to make you a part owner in the bar, which gives you an equity stake. And slowly but surely over the next few weeks and months, the number of cash transactions in the books starts going up. Except in reality, nothing changes. But what you're recording is an uptick in cash because that's the laundered money that you're bringing in and feeding through the business. You, as a legitimate legal owner of this business, have rights to a legitimate legal distribution of profits. So at the end of 2, 3, 4, 6 months, whatever period of time it takes, you start getting paid out that money that was originally yours to begin with. And in one step, it has been cleaned. This brings us to phase 3, which is the integration of this money into the legitimate economy. By being invested into a business and then being stored in a legal bank and redistributed to you through legal, tax-compliant means, you have integrated this illegal money into the normal economy, which you then use to buy a house on the legal market, and suddenly everything is cleaned. But this doesn't come without cost. First, you have to pay the 5 or 10% you promised your friend in order to go along with this, and then you have to pay the applicable taxes on the distributions you receive from the bar. But 100% of cash that you can't use is nowhere near as valuable as 80% that you can.
Take a tax deduction on interest payments that you don't even make.
It won't surprise you to hear that the digital modern era has introduced a lot of challenges for law enforcement and intelligence agencies trying to monitor and prosecute money laundering crimes. The ease of digital transfers and the accessibility of money from one country in another makes currency flows very, very difficult to monitor. On the flip side to that, we've become very adept at implementing a lot of different rules and regulations on how to govern these types of transactions and systems, but it's not perfect. For every improvement we've made in know your customer tracking and being able to assess patterns in financial transactions and integrating different financial institutions under common regulations, the bad guys will always find a different avenue to go in. They'll always find a different direction, whether that's cryptocurrency or MMORPGs. Anything that carries value can be used for nefarious means. The position that law enforcement is in is that they have to be everywhere all the time monitoring everything, whereas the bad guys just have to find one place that law enforcement can't be and just go there. And I promise you, there will always be more opportunities to misuse tools and commit crime than there can ever be resources to stop it. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this first edition of Andre Explores. I think it's gonna be really fun to do kind of a deep dive into a variety of different topics, kind of assemble a potpourri, if you will, a grab bag of different subjects, try to engage with different people and different interests, because we're not all just one thing. I'm not just a guy who likes to make movies or a guy who likes to talk about movies. Sometimes I want to talk about physics and time travel or dogs. So if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You guys know what to do. You do not need me telling you about it every single week. And as always, you will see me in the next video.